Sorry, I was putting Lynn to the waiting room. I accidentally put you to the waiting room. Okay, and I'm going to hit the record button once people start coming in. So yeah. Okay, so I will enable waiting room and I'll transfer the hosting capability to you. So one moment. You're muted. You're on mute actually.
When you say you're enabling waiting room, people can just enter, correct?
That's right. I
Oh,
mean
well, actually,
disabling.
yeah. Yeah, you're going to disable it. I'll hit admit all for the moment. If you hit disable it, that'd be good then.
Right. And please make me the co-host.
I will.
All right. So people are coming in. I'll just be in the background and just call my attention, okay? If you need anything.
There you are. You are now co-host. Phil, thanks. Hi,
Oh,
everybody.
it's actually Gloria, not me.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Lots of familiar faces. I bet we have lots of experienced solo travelers with us today.
Russ, sorry for interrupting, but you made Gloria the co-host, not me.
Oops, I apologize for that. Let me go back and, sometimes that jumps around. Let's change that. I see what you mean when I did that. Let's see. Okay, now I'm going to get this right. Okay, Phil, you are now co-host. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. And
good, and you could admit people if they still need it. Welcome, everybody. We've got a good-sized class. So many familiar faces, and I bet we've got lots of... Hi, Regina. Good to see you. And Randy, welcome. Good. We got our panelists here. And we're going to give it a few minutes for any more folks to join us. Because this should be a full class today. And the guy next door operating his wood splitter has stopped. So that means my audio doesn't have to be a concern at all. I was going to do this class outside today, but when he started up the wood splitter, I moved inside. We have a big bank of woods, of trees. It's a wooded area behind our houses, the whole block here, the whole street. And we all are suffering from ash borer disease. So we're taking down lots and lots and lots of trees. The upside is that we have lots of firewood. The downside is that we are losing our tree cover out back. And hopefully we'll get something just as nice growing, but it's going to take a while. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you all here. And Phil is our TA today, but this is a panel with Regine and Randy, and I'll introduce them in a moment. And I want to encourage you all to ask questions today because that's what a panel discussion is. And you'll have two ways to ask questions. One is I'll just say questions and you can ask a question. It helps if you do the hand raising function with the reaction button and mute. That way we can queue up people having questions. And the other one is you can just put your question in the chat and we'll try to get around and answer the chat questions. We're going to give about 1 more minute for people to join in before we start and hopefully have everybody that signed up in here. I'm seeing lots of familiar faces and names. Really good to welcome all of you this afternoon. I often name everyone who's joined, but today we have so many, I think I'm just going to not be able to do that, but it's nice to see you all this afternoon. It's a lovely day here in Western Virginia. It's in the upper 70s, feeling like summer. I'm going to feel very poorly in about 2 days when the temperature's only in the low 60s. So it kind of got a taste of summer ahead of time. That's all right. I know summer's coming. I promised my wife after February when we had lots of snowstorms coming through here that I would not complain in August when it was hot. Well, I'm really glad to have you all here today. I'm going to do a short screen share here as a way of introducing everyone. And hopefully you are now seeing something that says traveling solo. If someone nods their head, I'll know that oh, excellent. Okay, traveling solo. That, by the way, is a bag I'm going to describe in a class I have coming up about how to pack for 2 weeks in a carry-on. And that is even smaller than a carry-on.
That is something I would love to learn.
Well, good. That class is coming up. How to pack for 2 weeks in a carry-on, because one of my top 10 travel tips is carry on a bag. Don't check it if you can avoid it. This is a convertible bag. Has a backpack that zips on and off. That gives it extra space. It has a set of wheels at the bottom. So when we get to that class, we'll talk about that. I'm Russ Eanes, your guide from Harrisonburg, Virginia. I'm an experienced traveler, including traveling solo. I'm a writer, walker, and a cyclist. I formerly was a book publisher, and as a book publisher, I love to help authors shape their ideas into a book. And I'm now a full-time guide with Get Set Up because I love working with older learners. You guys give me a lot of energy, and I collect a lot of wisdom from you. Get Set Up helps you learn useful things from people like you so you can do wonderful things. We learn from each other. Ideally, we can see you and your cameras are on, and we do have 2 members of our panel today, Randy and Regina, with us. They'll be definitely on camera. You can request a recording of this after the class. Email help@getsetup.io. By the way, you'll get an email at the end, and some of the top tips that Randy and Regina have helpfully sent to me in advance. Their solo travel tips will come to you, so you'll get those in some notes at the end. If you're joining by live stream, and we are live streaming today, the best way to participate is to join us and register for a class. That way you can be live and ask questions. And lastly, Get Setup's not paid to promote any specific products. We are strictly a learning organization. Today's panel are Regina Porter and Randy Dykhouse, I believe is how Randy pronounces it. I'll check in with him in a second on that. This is a picture that Regina sent me from her last big solo trip. Maybe it wasn't her last one, but her big solo trip was to Taipei, Taiwan for a month. And this is one that Randy sent me from a recent trip of his to Guatemala. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I am actually going to introduce Randy and Regina. And they can raise their hands, and I'll give them a second to also say something. But Regina Porter's a retired nurse. She's a mother of 2 and a grandmother of 9. She said, I never stepped out into life until I read a quote that said, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. I love that. And she says that she's already making preparations for her next solo adventure, and I can believe that. Randy retired in 2019 after a 35-year career as a librarian. His passions now, other than travel, are genealogy, learning Dutch, and baking the perfect brownie. And I guess, Randy, the last year you must have had time to bake that perfect brownie, because I know if you're like me, you didn't travel too much. He says he's looking very forward very much, pardon my words, to getting back on the road like the rest of us. So Randy, Regina, why don't you wave your hands? And I'll ask Randy, did I get your name right, Dijkhuis?
That's the Dutch pronunciation.
Okay.
I say Dijkhuis with a
Dijkhuis.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll let you say it whatever way you want to say it.
That's how I learned it growing up. So
probably the persons whose house was on the dike, I imagine, is where that came from.
Exactly. A house near a dike. Yep.
And I know a lot of people who are formerly Dutch that have a name similar to that.
Yeah.
And anything else you want to say about yourself, Randy? Tell us about that trip you took to Guatemala.
Sure. So that was in 2019. It was the week after I retired from my job. So I left my job on a Friday, and the following Wednesday I got on a plane to Guatemala and wanted to make a clean break of it, so to speak, and sort of reset my mind. It was 3 weeks I was gone, and did it completely in a backpack. In fact, that's my preferred mode. I was that summer in 2019, I was in the Netherlands and Germany for almost 6 weeks, and did that completely in a backpack too. So I second Russ's recommendation to not overpack and pack as lightly as you possibly can. Anyway, Guatemala was great. I have an old college friend who lives there, and she had given me and my partner a standing invitation to come visit any time, and we did that for the first time in 2017, I think. Then I went back in 2019 and spent part of the time with her, and part of the rest of my time wandering around the country. And the picture you saw is from Antigua, which is the second largest town in Guatemala. And it was during Holy Week. And they have one of the largest Holy Week celebrations in the world. And they attract thousands and thousands of people from all over the country and around the world, actually. And during that week, there are parades that march up and down the streets in Antigua. And on the street, people with their neighbors and with a company or some other association build these, they call them alfombras, which really means a carpet, and they're really street carpets. And they make them out of sawdust. And then there come, during the afternoon and the evening, processions up and down the street, and they go on for hours and hours. And they march over top the alfombras, and they're gone completely after all this painstaking work to make these very colorful street carpets. In a matter of minutes, they're gone. And then as soon as the procession is passed, the people are back out there rebuilding the Alhambra for the next procession. It's really quite something to see.
Wow.
It was great. It was the climax of the festival is on Good Friday, and everybody is up all night, Thursday night and into Good Friday, building their Alhambras. And then the biggest processions of the week occur on Good Friday. And so we were out there at 2 a.m. Watching people build their Alhambras, and then went back to my friend's house and had breakfast and caught some sleep. But it was quite an experience.
Wow, that's great. And
Yeah.
I can second that idea of, after you retire, take a trip pretty quickly as a way to a long trip to reset yourself. That I did something similar. Mine was 6 weeks walking across northern Spain with a backpack, which has now also become my preferred way of carrying something on. I've pretty much dropped the carry-on. Regina, tell us about your trip to Taipei. Just in a few words, you showed a great temple there.
Let me see, a few words, right? Okay.
I'm
I don't know how
limiting
I'm gonna
you.
do that. This was in, I checked the weather first. I will say that. I did not want to go in their monsoon, and I did not want to go in their summer. Okay. Going to East Asia at that time of year is terrible. I got there, I left March, latter part of March, and I was there until May 2nd. So I spent a month. I had no friends, no acquaintances, no one that I knew. So I just hopped a flight, made the hostel reservations. I stayed in a hostel. I did not stay in a hotel. It was a hostel. It was a co-ed. So it's male and female. Males on one side, females on the other. But you can see everybody when you're on your way to the shower in the morning, because they're on their way to the shower too. And breakfast is always was ready every morning. So that's another reason why I picked a hostel and apartments and what else? What is it? Apartments, cubicles, hostels. Okay. And I picked the hostel out of that because they had that ready-made breakfast, and the breakfast is not cereal. You don't get cereal in the morning in East Asia, in Asia. You get full meals. Okay, so that's the way that goes, and that's included in your stay.
Yeah, but you're sharing a room, right, with 10 other people.
No, you're not sharing a room. It's like, yeah, everybody is, you're right. Everybody is in the same room. We're all women. So we're all in the same room. Many of them are not staying as long as, well, maybe you are. So like you're gonna stay 2 weeks and somebody stays overnight. One of the women that I met was a tour guide from Vietnam. And she had a layover for a day. And we hung out for the day. And that was a wonderful experience too. What else can I tell you other than me traveling locally on the with the locals on their buses? I love the buses because when you stand at the bus stop, there's this marquee up there that tells you the exact time the bus is going to arrive, and it tells you exactly where it's going. And you've got these really big lit up maps that let you know where to go all around the city. So I love that. I wanted to get to the bank. The second day I was there, I wanted to get to a bank so I could exchange currency to get more money. And I went to the desk to ask the young lady how to get to the bank. You know, she told me to walk around the corner and walk up 2 blocks and cross the street and go to the bank. And I was like, can I get a cab? Can I get a taxi? She was like, you don't need a taxi. Just walk. And I just went out that door. And by the time I knew where the bank was. I knew where all the restaurants were. I knew where the mini shopping malls were. It was just fantastic. So I just ended up walking, period, everywhere I wanted to go. The temple I showed you was in walking distance of the hostel.
Excellent. Excellent. So now I'm going to ask some questions and I'll give you each a chance to answer. Randy, what's the best thing and the hardest thing about traveling solo?
So the best thing is not having to negotiate your daily schedule and what time things are going to get done, what things are going to get done. Are we going to go to this place or that place, and what time is that going to happen, and what are we going to eat, and where are we going to eat, and all of, and you know that. So that's you know, that's a little bit of hassle sometimes if you're traveling with somebody that you don't have when you're traveling alone. And sort of related to that is ability to make on the spur of the moment decisions. Like when I was in Guatemala, there was a place I wasn't planning to go and ended up going there for 3 days and came away with a couple of stories. So that was that to me are the biggest advantages. The disadvantage is not having someone when those special moments happen. You know, that all of you who travel, you know that things happen and you're surprised by it and you're delighted by it. And sometimes it's really nice to have somebody to share that with. And that doesn't necessarily happen when you're traveling alone.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with both those things. Regina, what do you find is the best thing about traveling solo, and what is the hardest thing about it?
Well, Randy said most of it. I like to set my own itinerary. I like to explore my own surroundings, the surroundings from where I'm staying. I like to get to know the area, you know, and to see what's in the area that I'm staying in. And I like meeting and eating with the locals. Okay, that's a definite, you know. The hardest thing I think was putting on my big girl boots and coming out, stepping out of my comfort zone and to boldly go where I had never been before. That was the hardest thing for me.
Okay, very good. Randy, and Regina, I'll ask Regina this question first. Do you plan your own travel, and how do you go about doing it?
I plan my own trip from scratch. That is the most exciting part for me. To know, try to decide first where I want to go. And I leave that up to Google Flights. I go to Google Flights and I put in where I'm going to depart, but I don't put a destination. And I click search. And I do a tentative date as far out as I can make it. Okay. So once I do that search, it'll give me the price of all these various locations across the United States and the East and Europe, all over. And I make my decision according to my pocket, according to how much money I want to spend. That will determine where I'm going to go next. So okay. Japan was, Tokyo was the next one, is the next one.
So Tokyo's the next one. Great. How about you, Randy? Do you plan your own travel? How do you go about it?
Yeah, definitely. Much like Regina. I'm not quite as, I mean, I always know where I'm going. I wouldn't trust Google to tell me where to go. So I always know where I'm going. I know where my destination is. I know when I'm going to land. And then I usually have a rough idea of where I'm going to be for, you know, certain days, but not necessarily what the accommodation is going to be. Is it going to be a B&B? Is it going to be Airbnb? Am I going to be staying with a family in their spare guest room? Those things I tend to do on the fly. Not entirely, but to as much great an extent as I can, because those 6 weeks I was in the Netherlands, that was great. You know, I met some really fabulous people by staying in their house and doing Airbnb.
So you didn't book your hotel prior to your trip, is what you're saying?
Not always. When I went to the Netherlands, I knew where I was staying my first night. I knew when I got in where I was going to be that first night, but after that, I really didn't know where I was going to be the entire trip. And I ended up changing my itinerary quite extensively while I was there. Originally, I had said I was going to go these places on these days, and then I ended up not doing that at all and going someplace else entirely different. But I do it, yeah. So that does not lend itself to having somebody else make your plans.
Well, I want to say this. The only thing I use Google Flights for is to see the pricing. Okay. I make my own decision as to where I'm going to go.
Yeah.
But I like to see the cost of the plane tickets before that.
Right.
And I make my own reservations, which is either a hostel or a cubicle or an apartment. I like apartments a lot, but sometimes hostels can be the thing, you know, but there you go.
What about safety, Regina?
Yeah, we'll come to that question, Yuta. Very good question. That's
Okay,
one of the big
thanks.
questions is about safety.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm glad you bring that up. We'll come to that one. That's a big question. Let me just ask a few more. How do you meet other people, and have you met other people on your trip that you've become long-term friends with? I personally have. I found more when I'm traveling solo. Well, a lot when I'm traveling solo. I should say my wife has never met anybody who's not a friend, so I meet lots of people through my wife as well. But have you each met some people, and how do you do it?
I don't think
Randy,
it's
why don't you go
something that
first?
Okay.
I don't think it's something you do. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rain.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I met somebody on my last trip to the Netherlands who we now talk on a regular basis, and yeah, I consider her a friend. What was the what was the other part of your question?
No, I just was curious. Do you meet other people?
Oh,
Have
yeah,
you made
yeah,
long-term
yeah,
friends?
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's interesting. I find that I have had good conversations with local folks in bars and coffee shops. Seem to be the best places. And for me, coffee shops are better than bars for some reason. Although in Guatemala, I ended up having a great evening with 3 or 4 young Guatemalans who were in the same bar I was, and neither of us could speak each other's language. They didn't know English. I don't have any Spanish. And so we were passing Google Translate back and forth on a phone and had a great conversation that way. So, and then later in that same trip, I met somebody in a coffee shop and we talked about this and that. So it's those informal sorts of places that seem to be for me, the best places to run into folks.
Regina, how about you? Meeting other people, and have you met many long-term friends?
I'm going to say, for me, my icebreaker: learn the basics of the language of the country that you're going to visit. If English is not the number one language, then you should learn the basics, the basic language of being polite. Okay, learn how to say hello in their language and thank you in their language, or excuse me, or if you need help or something. Little bitty things. Like I'm learning Japanese now a little, just to break the ice, because you'd be surprised at the looks that they have on their faces when they know that you can at least be cordial. You can at least say hello in their own language. That shows that you took the time to do that. And so people gravitate to you. They just come to you, and politeness has always been a number one thing with me. Being able to greet and being able to smile is a treasure. Being friendly and outgoing is okay, but not the overall thing. And I have a great conversation topic all the time. People are so curious when they see me. They're like, oh my gosh, she has no hair. So they want to ask, they want to say, so they, they're either staring at you like crazy or they want to ask you something. So yeah, I've not had a problem with conversation and making friends. Did you see the picture I sent you of Jennifer?
Of you with that other person?
That
Yes.
is one of my buddies. That's one of my buddies, and all the girls at the desk that I sent you. Those are my buds too.
That is great. That is great. That's one of the wonderful things about travel. I noticed that Melinda's got a question, so we'll come to that in a minute, Melinda. So hang in there. We'll get your question. And you had a question about safety, so we'll get that because that's one of the big questions. You each touched on this, but say a bit more about your favorite places to stay and why. And start with Randy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so places I try not to stay are hotels, especially chain hotels.
Mm-hmm.
They're just too sterile. You're in your own little room. You don't really get a chance to meet other folks. Hotel bars can be treacherous. So avoid hotels. I've had great luck with Airbnb, and like I said, last time I was in the Netherlands, I used Airbnb extensively and looked for places that were in people's homes. So they had a spare room that they're renting out for the guest for, you know, $20, $25, $30 a night. And it was a really inexpensive way to go. Often they would share food with you. If I couldn't find an Airbnb in the place where I wanted to go, I would look for a regular B&B. And then the third item, and Regina alluded to this, was hostels. I've had mixed experience with hostels. So I have a love-hate affair, love-hate relationship with hostels. But it's B&Bs and Airbnb are my top choices.
Okay. How about you, Regina? What are your favorite places to stay and why?
Well, my favorite place, I would say number one is an apartment. I like renting an apartment. Okay. I think my second would be, I think hostel would be my last, but I think with a hostel, you need to know how to stay at a hostel. It is not some place where you just come in and you just throw your bags down and this is it. You have to know how to stay at a hostel. Now, most people have experience in hotels or B&Bs or whatever, okay, guest houses. Very few people have experience with staying at a hostel or staying in a cubicle. There's a new one for me. It's called Book in Bed. Book in Bed. It looks like a bookstore, but it's got little nooks in there for you to stay in there with those books. And I'm going to reserve that one spot for myself on this next trip. But like I said, my first selection would be a guest house or an apartment. And last would be the hostel. But like you say, you never know. There's some in between.
Russ, I didn't have a question so much as a comment when you were talking about
Sure. Go ahead,
how you-
Melinda.
how you meet people. And as you know, I've done home exchange and I've also done Airbnb, but with both of them, I've kind of gotten to know that probably the most interesting one was when I went to Denmark, and I had been through Airbnb, had been contacting and talking to numerous different families about the possibility of an exchange, blah, blah, blah. And for one reason or another couldn't, but they all were kind of like, well, but if you come over, give us a call and come over, and meet us. So I had about 3 or 4 people that by the time I got over there, I had already agreed to meet. And it was so funny. My Danish guests were like, oh my God, you know more people in Denmark than we do. They couldn't believe how many places I'd been invited for dinner and lunch and all over the country, and that was kind of helpful. I haven't done that as much in other exchanges, which I probably ought to, because it turned out to be a really good way to follow through. But the other thing is, I certainly agree with Regina a lot about, and I don't know about you, Regina, being older, but my ability to learn another language is pretty limited as far as what my brain, but on the other hand, you are so right as far as needing to know the basic, courtesy phrases just to break the ice and, learn as much as you can. But the main thing is like you said, if you just let someone know, or just that you're willing to at least acknowledge their language, it goes a long way. And in Europe, a lot of places know English, but it is depending on, again, the region you're in. But
That's right. That's right. That's right. The Europeans know English in varying degrees. Some countries are really good, especially England, but Germany, probably the Germans know English the most. Scotland, I'm not so sure. Let me ask another question. This is one that a lot of people have about safety, and I know that men and women experience this differently. So let's start with Regina. What do you do to feel you're staying safe when you travel by yourself?
Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I rely on the Father to do a whole lot for Regina, okay? When Regina goes on trips, Okay, God takes care of her and covers me. Now, what I do, what's in my power to do, first of all, I am not a nighttime person in a foreign country. Okay, so I don't go out at night. All right, so whatever I need to do or whatever I need to see, I do that during the day because I'm by myself, for one thing. Okay. I don't go into areas that are not like seedy. Okay. Every country has a seedy area, and you need to know the seedy before you go. Just like you got Chicago, and they say, oh, there's certain parts of Chicago you shouldn't go to. Well, you need to know where that part of Chicago is. Okay. It's the same way when you go to a foreign country. When they say, well, there's an area that's high in crime or whatever, you need to know where that area is at so you don't make a mistake and go there. Okay. Especially when you're alone. And let me see, was it nighttime, being out at night, seeing whatever you need to see during the day, you know, making sure that the areas that you are frequenting are areas that are frequented by a lot of people. Okay, not why, like I say, by yourself, and not getting talked into coming off somewhere, off your beaten track, off your trail, off your itinerary. Strangers talking to you. I've had people offer selling me beads, want to sell me beads or whatever, but the beads are not on them. The beads are around the corner. Okay, you don't go around the corner. So these are things that these are things that help you stay safe.
Randy.
Yeah, I would second most of that. And I do think, as Russ said, there is a difference between men and women in some cases. Although I would hasten to add, on my travels, I've encountered far more solo female travelers than male travelers. And I don't know why. But when I was in Guatemala, I met so many women who were traveling alone, and some of them long-term travelers. And I mean months and months on the road by themselves. So don't think just because you're a woman that you can't do this. You can. And it does take, as Regina said, it does take some intelligence, and you need to keep your wits about you.
Yes.
It's really important to know those parts of the country or the parts of the city that you're going to that you want to not go into. When I was in Guatemala City has a reputation for being crime-ridden, and that's changing slowly. At least it was before the pandemic. But there are still areas within Guatemala City where you don't want to go any time of the day, let alone after dark. And I had done I've done some reading, and my partner here sent me a newspaper article that she had come across that listed those areas. So I just made sure I didn't go there while I was in the city. And the other part that I agree with Regina about is in most countries, there's sort of a tourist trail. And when you're in Europe, it really doesn't matter so much because it's pretty darn safe. In the Netherlands, I wouldn't hesitate going anywhere, any time of the day or night, because it's a very safe country. Guatemala, not so much. You don't want to get into the mountains all by yourself. You don't want to go off in the rainforest without a guide, for example. At least I wouldn't. Maybe if you've got a lot more experience, then that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and one thing that's good is if you're going to stay somewhere longer, it is nice to have a local contact who can tip you off on some things. So I've been to Colombia twice. Both time I visited with my son and daughter-in-law, who were our tour hosts taking us around. But one thing my son told me, for example, was we were in a town in the Chocó, which is a very poor region in Western Colombia. And as we were walking through town, he said, "Put your camera away." And he said, there's armed groups around here. They're not going to touch you or do anything. But if you get your camera out, you could be in a problem. He said, also don't photograph policemen in Colombia. That's also a no-no. Don't do that. Even though it's many times very tempting to photograph a militarized policeman behind barbed wire in a major city, because we don't see that in the US. He said, do not do that. So you get local advice on what to do and not to do. Melinda,
Yeah.
did you have a comment about safety?
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple things. I just traveled to Europe. I haven't traveled to third world countries alone, and probably wouldn't think of doing that. But I do know that two things is also dress like a local so that you don't stick out, and walk confidently. Walk like you know where you're going. And if you're unsure, always like just stop into a cafe or something like that, as opposed to looking lost on the street. But I think a lot of it's just common sense. I mean, I have been out at night, again though, in well-lit areas, on well-traveled public, things like that. But it's a matter of confidence. The two things that were kind of interesting is, one, you talk about policemen that don't like to be photographed. Of all places, I was in Milan and Sforza Castle, and there was a bunch of Italian policemen standing in an archway, and then one of the towers was beyond it. And I was sort of photographing them, but the towers and the things were beyond them, and they turned, and just with my phone, and they turned around and they were like, can we have that photograph? And I said, I said, I'm just trying to get a picture of the tower over there. And they left me alone. But it was kind of surprising because, like you said, it wasn't, you're like, I'm in Italy, come on, this is Milan.
Well, but, I think that might be a point worldwide. And I would actually consider that in Europe now myself, not to photograph policemen. That's kind of a smart thing not to do.
But anyway, there was something else, but I can't remember. So go ahead.
I was going to open it up for some questions, and I noticed that Leslie's got a question, and so I'm going to ask Leslie to go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. I have several questions. I've never traveled alone. I've traveled with my family, and we've traveled extensively. And we've had problems. We stayed at a hotel, a hostel. I don't know how you protect your belongings during the day if you're in a hostel with a group of people. So that's question number one. I mean, and what do you do about your passport? Do you sleep with your passport? Because I don't think they have safes there. So what do you do with your personal things, and is it safe? That's question number one. Number two, in taking cabs, our experience was, this is in a third world, actually it was India. You get in a cab and then he invites one of his friends to get into the front seat with him. I mean, that's really dangerous, but and we got out as a family, but I don't know, what you do about this. What do you do about health if you're by yourself and you break a leg or you're unconscious on the subway? How do you know, that you're going to be taken to a good facility, for care? In Guatemala, we were worried about being kidnapped. In Morocco, we worried about people. There were people coming by on motorcycles and snatching your purse, which might have your money and your passport. So, you're being very careful. You're in a public place. They come by on a motorcycle, they'll grab your camera, grab your purse, and they're gone, and you've got nothing. So,
well, let me go ahead and ask Regina, Leslie, those are good questions, to answer that question about how to keep your things safe in a hostel.
Okay, for one thing, I don't travel with my valuables. That's one thing. So if I got any gold or whatever, diamonds, whatever, they don't go with me. At a hostel, we had lockers. And they did not give us a lock. Okay. You had to put your own lock on it. You get your lock before you go, because when you make the reservation, you already know that this hostel has lockers. You can already send an email to the owners and ask them what type of security do they have at their place. Now, if they don't offer you the type of security that you're accustomed to, then it's time to move on. Okay. When I got to the hostel, I already had my lock. I had, my locker, and I locked my things in it. I didn't have any problems. As far as your passport, and you're in a hostel, my passport never left me. This is what I carry it in. This is what it was. Okay. That's the hotel card right there. Well, the hostel card. And inside here, I kept this is another thing about traveling, currency. Before you travel to whatever country you're going to visit, if they don't accept you as currency, if it's not, widely accepted, purchase a bit of the currency before you go. Make sure it's always low denominations. Make sure you know how much currency, what it is. Okay, so if it's $1, well, what makes $1 in that currency? What makes 50 cents in that currency? So you know the coins that you're giving and the low denomination bills that you're giving. I always purchase low denomination bills. Okay, so I don't carry any big bills on my person. And I keep change in order to make accurate change. So when the person says, well, it's 50 cents or $1.50, I have $1.50. This is a pouch that they sell. It goes around your neck and it goes under your clothes, down here under your clothes. It can sit in the waistband of your pants or whatever it is, or under your dress or whatever. And it keeps your passport and whatever other important documents that you may have on you at all times. It never leaves your side. You never leave your room with anything important in it. You always keep everything with you. So that's the thing when you go into a foreign country.
So do you literally sleep with your passport, or you lock it?
Well, when I'm in my room, I take it off and I slide it under the pillow. When I go to take my shower in the morning, everything goes back on me. All currency and change is in here. If I know I'm going to buy something and I stop in a cafe or whatever, I always have a couple of bucks in my pocket, a little change in my pocket, so I'm not pulling this out in public. So, like I say, it's your homework. It's your wonderful research before you make your trip.
And that'll be one of the tips we talk about. Top 10 is about having currency beforehand and knowing where to get it. Randy, do you have any way to answer some of those questions about safety? I mean, I know in Europe, I felt safe if I was staying in a guest house in a person's home and I felt safe there. I felt fine leaving my passport. In fact, I almost felt better leaving my passport there. But I've used the trick of, I'm wearing them right now. I have pants that have a zippered pocket inside a pocket with snaps. So it'd be very hard for someone to get all the way into there without me knowing it. But Randy, you go ahead. You have a...
Yeah, same thing. I made sure I had clothing that had abundant places to keep things and pockets that could either be zipped or snapped. But I was not a fanatic about carrying my passport everywhere. I would often leave it in my luggage in the room where I was staying. I always carried a copy with me, and I made sure that I had several copies before I left home. I would put one in my wallet. I kept one in some other places just in case the passport, I lost it for one reason or another. But like Regina, I made sure I had a lock with me. And if there wasn't a place to lock things up in a hostel, for example, and I honestly, I don't remember. The two hostels I stayed in when I was in the Netherlands, and one was in Germany. I don't remember if they had lockers or not, but I locked my luggage, and it was big enough and bulky enough that someone wasn't going to come in and just take it. And if I was, and I put it under the bed, hide it away as well as I could when I was at the hostel in Germany. And I also wore a, they used to call them fanny packs. I don't know what they call them now. It's a waist belt that had a space in it for cash. And so I didn't carry cash in a pocket because I got pickpocketed in Paris once. And fortunately, they reached into a pocket that had nothing in it. And it was over and done so fast. These people were good. It was over and done so fast that I didn't even know that there was a person's hand in my pocket until after I thought about it. I said, oh yeah, that's what that was. But after that, I made sure that I kept valuables, money, and so on in a zippered, some sort of zippered thing. And then your other questions about, what happens in case of accidents? Yeah, I mean, accidents happen.
Do you notify a State Department for the third world countries
that I'm there? No.
Not to Germany, of course, but to some of the third world countries,
No.
let them know that you're going to be there.
No.
Okay.
No, not I. If I was going to Iraq, yeah, I would probably do that. But for but for a Latin American country, no, unless it's in the midst of a revolution. I probably wouldn't go to Venezuela right now, for example. But Colombia and those are some of the countries that are really high on my list of places to go. I'd really love to spend more time in Latin America. I had a great time in Guatemala and want to see more of Central America and northern southern South America.
Yeah, that's good point, Randy. There's some places in the world I would really love to go to. Iran. I don't think I would go there right now as an American, but boy, everything I've read about ancient Persia, I would love to visit. We got one more question. Susan, you had a question.
It's not a question. It was a comment about the safety. I no longer carry a purse, even in the US. Wrist wallet. Slides on. One side has credit cards and ID, and the other side I can carry cash if I need to. It looks like a wrist brace. People mistake it for a wrist brace. They never think cash and credit cards. They always think, And the other thing I carry for instead of a purse is a travel vest, and it has ample inside pockets for anything you need, and you can zip and snap it up if you're in a crowd where somebody might try to pickpocket. If anybody tried to pick my pocket here, they'd have to assault me to do it. So
good advice.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing about some of those things that you can wear is they also can shout tourist, depending on how concealed they are. My wife has a sling bag that can either go on her back, it goes over one shoulder. If she feels safe, if she feels concerned, she can swing it around and she can carry it in front of her. It's about the size of a large purse. You can also stick a jacket or something like that.
Well, I can use this when I'm exercising too.
There you go.
So I use it. I mean, when I go to the grocery store, wrist wallet.
That's nice. I haven't seen those before, Susan. That's a great tip. I'm going to have to look
Amazon.com.
Okay. Another question for our panelists.
I was only going to say also that as far as carrying things, typically we all carry a backpack or something, a lightweight backpack with us, which for extra clothes and things. But the old thing of wearing it on the front of you as opposed on your back when you're on public transportation that's crowded, that kind of thing. But anything that's close to you. And I don't even, like I said, I've always carried a cross bag, even in the United States. I don't carry any kind of purse that's not close to you.
I'm going to join Susan because I'm going to get that. I like the vest, but I know they've got some new stuff, Susan, that that you can wear as a woman. I saw the bra. Did you see the bra? Oh yeah, they got a bra that's just perfect. Okay, so I got to get some new stuff. I'm kind of lagging here.
Well, this vest I can put my camera equipment into, so it's I can reach it from the outside. There are a lot of pockets on the outside as well that, you know, nobody is going to try to steal unless they want a camera cover or, you know, a
Okay.
lens cover or something. But then it has all these inside pockets where you can put anything next to your body that you really don't want, like your passport, if you wanted to carry your passport, and they zip up and everything. So they're very secure.
That's what I want this time, because I need my hands free to eat. Because I had bags or whatever when you go shopping, and I had too many bags and I couldn't eat on my way back to the hostel. So I'm going to have to condense, girl, this time.
There's one question in the chat was asked to Regina. Could you explain a cubicle in a hostel?
It's like, okay, a cubicle is like it's more or less like a tube. You know, when you go in to take a what is it, an MRI? Is it where they roll you in the tube thing? Okay, it's just a bigger one. It's just a bigger tube. Okay, and in a hostel, they were like, how do I call them? They're like bunk beds at this one. And I was at the top, and I remember the girl at the bottom was leaving the next day. So I asked him, I was like, look, I'm older. I can't just jump to the top. So you need to put me at the bottom and put the other girl at the top. So they did the switch, you know. But this time, I'm telling you, that book and that bed look good. So I'm going to stay at the bookstore.
That's great. Well, we're out of time, and I really thank our panelists. We should all give them a virtual applause here, or a real applause for participating.
Wonderful.
Randy and Regina, thank you very much. I really appreciate your expert advice and your experience. We'll be doing this class also next week. We also have a traveling safely class coming up, traveling safety, because that's this class came about because of a request from learners. And so I always love when we can do a class that responds to the needs and the requests of learners. And the same thing is on a class on safety. That's also been requested by a lot of learners. And again, I think there's women, men perceive it a bit differently, and I understand that. And so we'll make sure we have some panelists for that one. If anyone is interested in sharing your experience on any of these things or would be like to be part of a panel, please contact me. You should get my get set up email in your notes after this class. So you can use that to reach out and share anything. You can share talk about a travel experience you'd like to share in a class. You can talk about an experience or expertise you'd like to share with others, and any photos. We are doing sort of a photo contest. So if anybody's got a great springtime travel photo that you'd like to share, go ahead and reach out through my email. Let me see that one. You are a great group. I really appreciate having you all here. Again, a big thanks to our panelists, Regina and Randy. Regrets to Rosa. We had a third panelist who was going to join us, Rosa, and Rosa's in the hospital, unfortunately. Rosa is a very experienced traveler. Also, I've known her as someone who's walked the Camino de Santiago numerous times. So she would have a lot of tips on women who do long distance walking. And as Randy said, I have met more women traveling solo when I'm traveling than I've met men traveling solo. Not sure exactly why that is. It might be part of the same reason that I don't see as many men in our classes, and maybe I don't see very many in my exercise classes either. I'm not sure what it is. I haven't. See if I can figure that out. But thanks, Randy, for coming.
It's because we smart women. We smart women.
Very good. I'll remember that, Regina. I appreciate having you all here today, and if anyone wants to come back tomorrow night, this evening at 7:30, we'll be doing Rick Steves' cuisines of Europe. I think this one's on Greece again. So again, I warned you all, Greece and Italy. If you haven't eaten, make sure you eat before the class tonight.
So
and
adventurous.
11 o'clock on Friday, I'll be talking about a free city tour in York and Munich. So if you want to come back, hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon and evening.
Russ,
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes.
I know it's probably still technical help.
Thank
but
you.
For the last 2 weeks, I have not been getting the notices, before the class. We're usually an hour in the day before, so it's in the email. So you just click on.
Okay.
And I've asked for help, and I've done they gave me a link, and I've done everything.
And so you
it's just not
called
in my
the
trash.
you called the tech support number.
I haven't called them.
Try that number, the tech support number. It's on the front of. You can get to it very easily through the Get Set Up webpage.
Okay.
Try that one, and then if you don't have any success, please get back to me.
They used to all the time. That was the reason I was late getting to you. I started to stream, and then I realized, well, then you can't interact. So, and then trying to find an email that's 2 weeks old. So
yeah, I understand. Well, I'm
that's
glad you were with us.
okay. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.